MrBeast loves to make his videos more interesting by using game theory. Every time he does a last to leave challenge, it's a game called War of Attrition. He ended his ages 1 to 100 video by having the contestants play a bluffing game. And he ended two strangers trapped in a room for 100 days with a prisoner's dilemma. Except something went wrong in that last one. So today I want to talk about whether MrBeast ended up breaking the logic of game theory, and whether that means we need to rethink an entire field of economics. Just to recap what happened in his video. He put two strangers in a room and said they had to stay there for 100 days. On the final day, they had $370,000. But MrBeast puts them into a classic game. They can choose to split the money as planned, or they can choose to steal. If one chooses steal while the other chooses split, then one gets all the money and the other gets nothing. But if they both choose steal, they just spent 100 days in a prison and have nothing to show for it. This relates to a classic gaming game theory.
So here I had an explanation of the prisoner's dilemma, but it's long and it's boring. So here's the short explanation. They have the option to be quiet or confess, and if they are both quiet, they minimize their joint jail time. But the incentives that the police set up mean that they both confess, and so they both get longer jail time. They get the worst possible world. And here's the payoff matrix right here if you're interested in what that looks like. Let's go back to the video.
The prisoner's dilemma has been used to study international relations, evolution, and even quantum physics. The prisoner's dilemma is the perfect game, and there's a shortage of perfect games in this world. It would be a pity if MrBeast damaged it.
You both chose split! Congratulations, that's right!
Inconceivable!
This is a game that has been used so many places, and everywhere says you should end up in the bad world. How in the world did they end up in the better world where they both cooperated? Well, let's set up this exact game and see if we can understand what happened. As I set up this game, see if you can figure it out too. So rather than staying quiet and confessing, they have split versus steal. Same type of idea. Now, if they both choose to split, then they each get $185,000. But if one decides to split and the other one decides to steal, they'll get $370 for the person who said steal, and the person who said split will get 0. Flip on the other side, right? The person who said split while the other one says steal, they get $370. And if they both say steal, they both get 0. Have you caught what is going on here and why this might be a problem in the game setup? At first, I thought this all worked out because MrBeast didn't offer them a true dilemma. That's because there are no strictly dominant strategies. Now remember the way that we went through this. You look and say, if they choose split, what should I do? Well, if I choose split, I get 185, and if I choose steal, I get 370. 370 is better. We want the higher number in this case, and the other one I gave you, we wanted the lower number. And here we get, if they choose steal, if I choose split, I get 0. And if I choose steal, I get 0. Actually, I don't care which one of those I do. I'm starting to see what's going on here, right? Let's imagine that this player chooses split. So if they choose split and I choose split, I get 185 versus 370 if I choose steal. Obviously, I'm choosing steal. And if they do steal, I do split, I get 0. I do steal, I get 0. I don't care. I'm indifferent between those. And whoa, all of a sudden, we have 3 different equilibria showing up here. This is what I thought was the problem, was that if you had these different equilibria, then like maybe they can choose to be in one of these corners. And by choosing to be in one of these corners, they actually end up being in the good world. But that's actually not what the problem is. In this kind of world, how do I decide what to do? Well, instead of looking at each choice individually, where I just like look at one column, one row, then one row, I need to look across the whole menu. When I look at my whole menu, what I'm asking is, are there any strategies that just consistently outperform any of the others? For example, if I am this player over here on the left and I'm looking at both whether I choose split or steal, I'll notice that in both worlds, I get the same minimum amount of payment, but in another world, I get way more if I steal. So actually, the world is better off for me if I just get rid of split as one of my options, because I'll always do at least as good as split by choosing steal. And of course, on the other side, I look at this and I say, well, that's the same options for me if I'm this first person, so I should delete the strategy of split as well. And that only leaves, so that strategy's gone, that strategy's gone, that only leaves this world right here. We're going to both choose steal. That's because steal is a weakly dominant strategy. This way of thinking through strategies is about thinking through the best response to my opponent's strategy. But that was not always the way people thought about solving games. There's another approach we can take. What I didn't cover in my review of MrBeast's video is that the players started with $500,000. But every 10 days, MrBeast visited the players and said, "This challenge is pain. Anyone who says different is trying to sell you something. And here's what I want to sell you." And so he would offer some ridiculously overpriced item to try and make the challenge a little bit better for them. But from the very beginning, they fought hard not to spend money. It was like they looked at every luxury offered and said, yeah, in the best world, yeah, this is nice. But in the worst case, I realized that I lost $50,000 for something I could have lived without. So what if they looked at their choices here and said, what's the worst thing that could happen to me? Then they would be playing a strategy called maxmin. But that still doesn't help us that much, because in both cases, the worst case scenario is the same. They will get 0 in the worst case world. That doesn't really help us eliminate anything down, because they're just going to say, like, what should I do? Split, steal? Well, if the worst case is the same, maybe I should just steal. Unless this matrix is a lie. Both Bailey and Susie have YouTube channels, and Susie's biggest video was when she appeared in another YouTube star's video. They knew that this challenge was the chance to launch their channels. But can you really launch a channel if you're the jerk who chooses to steal someone else's money? And then there's another problem with this matrix. MrBeast is a notorious liar. No, I don't mean he lies about whether his challenges are real. There's plenty of evidence he's paying the people and that they're doing real stuff. I mean that he hates sending people away empty-handed. So in this video, with ages 1 to 100, he had them play a game, which was basically the same game that was played with the poison and the Princess Bride. He still made sure the woman who lost got $10,000 and the family vacation she was dreaming of. And even though he told Mac over and over again that he would lose everything if he kept going against the traps, when Mac lost $700,000, MrBeast felt bad and gave him $100,000 for his troubles. If you had just been trapped for 100 days, and then your roommate steals your money, there's no way MrBeast is letting you leave empty-handed. But if that's the case, that means we can change the payoffs in these cells, meaning that if somebody chooses steal and the other chooses split, let's just say you get $10,000 anyway. I don't know what the actual payment would be, but you're not leaving empty-handed is the big thing. Well, if that's the case, then the worst case scenario in both of these people's worlds is no longer 0. The worst case scenario is whatever the consolation prize MrBeast decides on. And if that's the case, then if I want to minimize my worst case scenario, then I'm going to choose this world where I get at least $10,000, which means I'm going to choose to split the money. And in that case, we both end up with $185,000. Now, there's one other way they could have both chosen split, but let me point out why this one isn't super satisfying first. If you know that your roommate is going to avoid the worst case scenario and always play split, then you can win a lot more money by playing steal. So while both of them playing split in a maximum strategy is technically possible, it is not stable. But the other option is. Like I said earlier, the prisoner's dilemma is so interesting because there's a better world that the players can't achieve. But there's one simple change you can make to this game to make sure you get the better world. You have to get rid of one big assumption. But once you do, this game starts to explain why we structure society the way we do. To get there, you have to ask yourself what these two strangers plan to do on the 101st day. Do they plan on never seeing each other again? Or during 100 days of shared challenges, do they bond? Do they become friends? Do they become YouTube collaborators? Appearing on each other's channels, helping each other grow, and make even more money than a one-time payment of $185,000 would get them. Because this game assumes that on the 101st day, they never see each other again. But if they are friends, and if they keep repeating this game for the rest of their lives, then a one-time steal might not be worth it. You might choose split because you're interested in the lifetime of future value this relationship is going to create. That might be something you value a lot. And that's the classic solution to the prisoner's dilemma. Turn something that is a one-off game into a repeated game. Do something with that person over and over again so you don't have the incentives to cheat on each other.